Alright, so the difference quotient may not seem like it's very important right now, and honestly it's not in the pre-calculus standards, but you will definitely be using this when you get to calculus, especially if that's the reason you're taking pre-cal, in order to set yourself up for taking calculus. I wanted to do a review video. I know there's several of them that are in the support, but just so you have it from me as well. And there's multiple ways that you can go about learning this. Now, there is a worksheet that goes with this, so please make sure you pay attention to that. And the difference quotient really will be used in calculus when you start talking about like the slope and the rate of change for your secants and tangents. So you'll kind of get there with your other pieces. Alright, so it's asked me to find the quotient difference, and it wants us to simplify. So given the fact that I have f of x is 5x minus 8, that is telling me that I'm going to take x plus h, and I'm going to plug that into the x spot for my first piece. Then I'm going to subtract the whole function f of x, and then divide that by the letter h. Okay? So I'm going to kind of go ahead and set that up so you can see it. So here in the problem, I have 5, and in my parentheses where the x is, I'm going to input that x plus h. Okay? So then from there, I have minus 8. So there's my first piece that we would have done. So let's check that part off. Alright, so then we're going to subtract my whole f of x. I'm going to put in parentheses so I can remind myself that I'm subtracting the whole thing, because if you don't, you forget to distribute that negative to the whole problem. And then we're going to divide that whole thing by h. So now it just really comes to simplifying. So we have 5x plus 5h minus 8. And if we distribute the negative, we got to make sure we distribute both pieces. So we have negative 5x plus 8. And we're going to divide that by h. Alright, so let's look and see what we've got here. So we have 5x minus 5x, so those are going to go away. We have negative 8 and 8, so we're left with 5h over h. Okay, so if we divide those h's, that's going to give me 5. So you'll kind of learn later on when you start talking about the slope of your lines, that connection that you're getting. But for right now, you're just learning the process. Okay? Alright, so for the next one, I have the same process, the quotient difference, and we have 7x squared minus 3x minus 1. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to plug in our x plus h into all of my pieces that it applies to. So I have 7, and then I have x squared. So in the x squared spot, I'm going to plug in x plus h. Alright, and then I have minus 3x, so we're going to plug in that x plus h again. And then minus 1. Alright, so then that whole piece we are going to subtract, and I'm going to go and put in parentheses to make sure we know to distribute that negative. Now, I'm going to wait to divide this by h. So like I've done these two parts right here. I'm going to wait to divide the h once I've simplified the top a little bit more. So I have parentheses, which means this I need to multiply twice. So I have x plus h, and I need to apply that twice. And I'm actually going to go ahead and distribute that negative 3. So it's going to give me negative 3x minus 3h minus 1. Distribute the negative into the parentheses. So that's going to be minus 7x squared plus 3x plus 1. And of course I'm going to multiply. I'm going to leave that 7 there, but I have x times x is going to give me x squared. X times h is going to give me xh. H times x is going to give me another xh. And h times h is going to give me h squared. Again, I have minus 3x, minus 3h, minus 1, minus 7x squared plus 3x plus 1. Alright, so we got a lot of simplifying to do here. So I have 7x squared, so I'm going to distribute. Now, in this piece, I have 2xh. So 7 times 2xh is going to give me 14xh plus h squared. And I have 3x and negative 3x. I have a negative 1 and a positive 1. And what do I have? Negative 3h left minus 7x squared. So I should see some more things happening here. So I have 7x squared, negative 7x squared. So when I get through these options, I have h squared plus 14xh minus 3h. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this all by h. And I should see that I have an h here, an h here, and an h here, which means I can GCF an h out. So I have h, and that's going to leave me with h plus 14x minus 3 divided by h. Those cancel. So I've done the divided by h now, and I should have my final piece as h plus 14x minus 3 as my simplified answer. So yes, it does take a little bit of algebraic multiplication and algebraic simplification, but you guys got this. And the last one. So I have f of x equals 1 over 4x squared. So again, I'm going to start out. I'm going to plug in x plus h. So in the parentheses, I have x plus h minus 1 over 4x squared Alright, so when I look at this, I have parentheses, a set of 2. So I'm going to make sure that I multiply that out. So I have 4, this is going to be x squared plus xh plus xh plus h squared. I'm going to kind of extend that so we know that's the whole fraction over 4x squared. Alright, so once we've done this, I'm going to simplify, and we're going to have to actually find a common denominator in order to finish this problem, because there is subtraction, we have fraction. So I have 1 over 4, and that's going to become x squared. Then I have, so right here I have 2x squared. So that's going to be 2 times 4 is going to give me 8x squared, or 8xh, sorry, not squared, plus 4h squared minus 4x squared. Alright, so at this point you can see what we have. So in order to find a common denominator, give me a sec, and I'm going to copy this to a new slide. Alright, so this is where we ended off just a second ago. So I have 2 denominators, and I'm going to have to make sure I multiply the correct denominators on each side. So because there is addition and subtraction between each one, we're going to have to multiply them as a whole denominator. So we're going to take this piece and we're going to multiply it over here. So this is going to be 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared. And of course, when we do that, we have to do it in the top and the bottom. Okay. And then on the other side, we have 4x squared, and we're going to take that 4x squared and we're going to multiply it over here. So I have 4x squared on the top and 4x squared on the bottom. Alright, so trying to put all of this together, this piece is going to be 4x squared in the top. Now, I'm not going to multiply this out. I'm going to keep them as two separate pieces. A lot of times you can simplify better when they're separated. If we see that there is a pattern, then we'll go from there. Minus, and this whole problem is being subtracted. So I have 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared. And again, that's going to be all over 4x squared plus 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared. Okay? So we've at least got a common denominator now, and since we have a common denominator, we can do some subtraction. So if I clarify or simplify a little bit, I can see that I have 4x squared, and if I subtract 4x squared, those are going to cancel each other out. Okay? Now, this minus has to be applied to negative 8xh and 4h squared. So I have negative xh minus 4h squared, and that's all over 4x squared times 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared. Now, if you are not aware, we have done everything except for the dividing by h part. So the dividing by h part, before we get to that final step, I am going to simplify one thing, and that is in the numerator, you should see that I have a GCF of h. They both have an h, so I can pull that out. So this is going to give me this is going to give me h times negative 8x minus 4h. And that's being divided by 4x squared, and then that whole parentheses again. So 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared. Okay? Now, at this point, I am going to take my whole problem and divide by h. Now, when I divide by h, that is the same thing as multiplying by h. So when I set this up, I have h times negative 8x minus 4h divided by 4x squared times 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared. Alright? Now, instead of dividing by h, we are going to turn this into multiplying by 1 over h. So why do we want to do that? Because now, because I have multiplication, I have an h in the numerator and an h in the denominator. Those will cancel. My final answer is going to be, and let me see if I can make some room for this here. Let's kind of split it all up. And I'm going to put it in red so we can see it. So I have negative 8x minus 4h divided by 4x squared times 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am well aware that that is a lot of algebra. Okay? You need to know how to do this, especially if you're going to plan on going to calculus. So make sure that that is something that you practice. This one right here, yes, was one of the more difficult ones, because not only do we have to multiply because we had an x squared and we were plugging in, but we also had to find common denominators, and it was just a whole lot. Okay, so there is one problem like this on your practice worksheet. So please be mindful of that. And if at any point you need help, you need to message me. Don't wait till the last minute. Send me a picture and I can help you through a few steps and maybe to get you going, or we can Google chat or whatever it may be to help you get through this.